about a covenant in a deed. Is anybody familiar with that term? And if you're not, that's okay.
Did
Again,
you say
judgment free
did
zone.
you say deed?
A covenant in a
Oh,
deed.
covenants
So,
in general, yes, but not.
okay,
Go ahead.
no worries, no worries. So, property covenant is an agreement between two or more parties that are
Yeah.
um, buying or selling real estate. So it's an agreement that you have written in your contract, right?
Hmm.
Covenants are wild. Like, so my partner worked as a land surveyor, and so part of his job is when he was out in the field, he would go out and look at boundary lines. So if two neighbors were disputing a fence and saying the fence is mine, no, the fence is mine. He's the one that goes out there, looks at the property, and says, actually, it belongs to neighbor A, not neighbor B, right? What he found when he was going through deeds, because he has to look through deeds in order to figure out where the property boundaries are and stuff. They had covenants written in there that said stuff to the effect of uh, this home may never be sold to a person with Negro blood.
Mm.
And that's in thousands of deeds. It's scratched out, right? Like they're not gonna legally, they can never hold anybody accountable to it. But the fact here in Portland, liberal Portland in Washington, you have that kind of stuff happening. So that's what a covenant, that's not, I mean, that's not the only type of covenant, but that is one that was specifically used to keep Black people out of home ownership, to keep Black people out of certain neighborhoods. And it's not just Black people, right? You could say indigenous people, or you could say, they did it with the Chinese folks that moved here to build on the railroad. You couldn't sell property to Chinese people, right? So it happens all across the board. Um, and though Alaska is not as visible, it is still there. It might not be codified into deeds and written as covenants, but it's certainly in there. If you notice how some neighborhoods you don't see a whole lot of Black folks there, you don't see a whole lot of indigenous people in those neighborhoods. While it wasn't expressly formalized, there's been a concentrated effort to keep Black and other people of color out of particular neighborhoods. I don't know if you ever go to Anchorage and you drive out to this area called King Kade Park. There's a bunch of streets out there called the Berries. So it's
Mm.
like Gooseberry Street, Strawberry, Raspberry, Blueberry Road. Like it's huge houses. Very rare that you'd see somebody that looked like me out there. And if you did move out there looking like me, um, you might not receive the warmest of welcomes. You might not, perhaps. It could be wrong. Somebody's gonna watch this and be like, "My best friend is Black and lives there," and I'm gonna be like, "Who?" Because I know all the Black people in Anchorage. No, I'm just kidding. No, I don't. But people think I do. When I tell them I'm from Alaska, like, "Oh my God, do you know such and such?" No, you don't. But anyway, digress. So, where you'll really see this, where you'll see Blacks, Alaska Natives, and other people of color being squeezed out. You'll see a lot of them concentrated in neighborhoods like Muldoon, Fairview, and Mountain View. It is wild. So the next slide I'm going to show you is wild. And I'd never considered this. Redlining impacts us on so many different levels. What you're looking at is the Glen Highway. This right here. So this is the Glen, and it cuts all the way through here, right? When you look at the neighborhoods that this cuts through, it's pretty obvious what they've done. So they built this highway, and it has 100% completely contributed to housing inequality in Anchorage. So the Glen Highway runs through East Anchorage, and then it isolates lower income and minority communities and immigrants from wealthier areas. This is why there's no grocery stores in Fairview. It cuts right through there. So it makes it dangerous to like cross over and to get to the other side. It's this huge highway that runs through. And it, like I said, it makes it incredibly dangerous. As a matter of fact, that stretch of highway, this right here, as you're in Mountain View and Anchorage, this is, I just found this out the other day. That is the deadliest portion of the highway for pedestrians. That's people trying to cross to get to jobs, to try to get to better grocery stores, to try to get to East High School. That's where you get more people getting hit by cars. And those people typically are Black, brown, indigenous people of color. So there's not a whole lot of white people that live in those neighborhoods. So the Seward Highway, which runs south through the city, that also divides the wealthier South Anchorage from lower income areas. And both of these highways severely disrupted Anchorage's urban development, and that did nothing but exacerbate the issue between the segregation of neighborhoods. So the people that live near these highways, again, people of color, right? They are subjected to more noise pollution, more just regular pollution. It's dangerous because, trying to cross the street, and we don't have great sidewalks either. It's not like here in Portland where there's a ton of like bike paths and stuff like it's not like the city makes it easy to get from one side to the other. Right. So all of this does is just continuously reinforce the long-term social and economic inequalities between the communities. The There's been quite, and we'll talk more about this, but there's been quite a bit of conversation about creating some legislation in order to put in place more, I was going to say more safer, put together safer pathways for pedestrians because people are just kind of fed up, right? Like you have built this super big, noisy, dirty, grimy highway in our
But you know what
neighborhood
they
and you
do
haven't
have?
given us a way to do it.
You know
Say
what they
again,
do have? Do you know what they
what?
did just implement? Bike
What?
paths. Bike paths.
Shut the front door. Okay.
There's a bike path running through Fairview so that people can bike to downtown from where? South Anchorage, could it be?
I know this isn't making a whole lot of sense to you because you don't live in Anchorage, but what she's saying is egregious. It is not great. So, there is some good news. So the neighborhood that I was telling you about earlier, Nate, Fairview, um, in the last year, it was awarded a little over $500,000 in a federal grant to the U.S. Department of Transportation's Reconnecting Communities pilot program. I had to read that verbatim just to make sure I said it right. So this funding is part of a bipartisan infrastructure law that is looking to address the impacts of the Gamble, you wouldn't know the street, but Gamble and Ingra, which is
Mm.
another really long highway that kind of cuts in between this neighborhood. So it's basically they have been given them this money to fix it, to make it so it's easier for people to get from one side of the street to the other. Because that's another dangerous portion of Anchorage is that Ingra Gamble area because that road is so huge and it's not great to try to cross the street. Um I remember going on field trips when I was a kid, and we would try to cross that busy highway. And there's not a lot of what are those that you press the button and the little guy turns green or
A
the hand turns
crosswalk.
crosswalks. There we go, crosswalks. Yeah, thank you. Good looking out. I appreciate you. So they just got a grant that is looking to fix that up, which thank goodness for that. It's supposed to serve as a model for other neighborhoods. They haven't started work on it yet, but fingers crossed it should be coming like next summer.